Hey, welcome back to this podcast. My name is Dr. Jessica Eaton, and I'm going to be talking to you about our own personal biases and beliefs and our values. For those of us who are working in child sexual abuse, whether you're supporting children, supporting families, whether you're working in research, whether you're in management, this podcast is, I guess, just me talking about encouraging you to reflect on your own beliefs. And this has come at a really interesting time because I've recently released my latest book, which is not really a book, it's a journal. I created a journal. So it's called The Reflective Journal for Practitioners Working in Trauma and Abuse. And there is a whole section in that journal about this. It's about your values, your beliefs, and your own biases that you take to work every day. Now, before I get into some of them, I just want to say that one of the biggest mistakes you can make in our field, whether you're working in abuse, psychology, criminology, counselling, sociology, research, if you're in frontline practice, if you're in management, if you're doing, you're holding cases, or if you're an inspector, anyone, the biggest mistake you can make is to believe that you're objective. You ever heard the phrase, don't believe your own hype? That for me is so important. It's like, you can claim to be an objective scientist, you can claim that you only make decisions based on the facts of the case, blah, 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 but it's not true. That's not the way that human thought and interaction actually works. You always carry your own biases, your own beliefs, your own values, the stereotypes that you hold of different groups of people or different events or issues in the world. They don't just get switched off when you make a decision just because you think they do. So you could think, right, I'm I'm just not gonna take into account anything I've ever experienced or seen or felt or lived through whilst I make this particular decision, because it's just impossible. You are made up of all of those experiences, or, everything, I don't know, your mum used to say when you were a kid, or the area you grew up in, or the school that you went to, or that abusive relationship that you went through, or, all these different things, right? Those tiny influences that they've had on you, they shift the way you think about the world and the way you talk and the way that you understand issues. So, and that's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean that you're a worse practitioner or a worse researcher. What it means is that you have to be aware of them. Every single person in this world is biased and is subjective, not objective, and has values, has beliefs, holds stereotypes, and believing that you don't is so dangerous. So, I'm always really cautious around academics or practitioners that will tell me, I'm able to be completely objective. I just leave my, whatever's going on at home, I leave it at the door. I don't let home life affect my work life, and I don't let work life affect my home life. I'm like, yeah, right, okay then. It's just not possible. That's not the way. There isn't a door on your brain that you can shut for a bit, and then nothing comes through that door, and it can't possibly influence your decisions or your choices or your beliefs. It just doesn't work like that. So be authentic, be proud that you are reflective, and own your biases and your values and your belief systems, and also challenge yourself. If you start listening to this podcast and you think I do actually hold some, beliefs or values that I would never say out loud at work, why? Why won't you? Is it because they're awful? Or is it because they're new ideas? Are they controversial ideas? Or is it because you work in a team that all hold one ideology and you don't subscribe to that ideology? And as I go through some of these, I'm happy to talk about myself as well, because, it's not fair me sort of preaching on this podcast and not reflecting on it myself. So one of the things I was going to do is work through some of the questions, the critical reflection questions that are in my new reflective journal, are just, whether there's anything in particular that stands out for me. So I'm going to read through some of them. And if you're in a particularly reflective mood, or if you have some time on your hands right now and you've got like your notebook out, or you've got your own diary, or you're on a train, you might want to pause me when I ask a question and just take a couple of minutes to think about what your answer would be if you were being truly reflective and honest with yourself. Or, if you're just working through this podcast, it's fine not to pause it. It's just an option there for those of you that want to use this podcast as an exercise. That might be quite interesting, I guess. So some of them I won't stop for because they're quite broad, and you might want to sit and do them another time, or they might not be completely relevant right now, or something like that. So the first one that's in this section that I can see on the page is everyone holds biases, but not everyone admits them. Jot down your thoughts about this statement. Now that one's interesting because, as I was just saying, I do truly believe that everybody has biases, everybody has these values and belief systems, but not everyone admits them. What worries me more is the people that don't admit them. I would rather be working with or trusting someone who said, oh, well, actually, I think I'm a bit biased about things like that because I had this personal experience. I would rather be working with someone like that than someone who tells me that they have no biases whatsoever and, they just make decisions purely on fact. That would worry me a lot more. Even if that person said to me, I don't know, let's make up something. I don't know. Let's make something of, okay, so I grew up in Stoke. So say someone said, oh, I've just got this bias, I really hate the Stokey accent because, I lived there for a little bit with my, grandparents, and I grew up in it was a really rough area and there was a lot of crime and the kids were horrible to me. And ever since then, I just hate that accent and I hate people from there. They're all just nasty, right? Even if someone acknowledged that bias, they are still further ahead than the people that don't think they have any. So even if they have that type of bias where they just hate a group of people because of their own personal experience, they're still more aware than the people that don't believe that they have any biases, okay? So, that would be my thoughts on that one. So I'll read some more out to you. Do you believe that the criminal justice system is effective? Why or why not? Now, this one's interesting because this is a belief, okay? And this is a belief that would affect your practice. If you are a practitioner that's working with children that have been abused, and you truly believe that the criminal justice system will always make the right decision, you are going to make different decisions, okay, than the practitioner who works with you who believes that the criminal justice system often gets it wrong, aren't you? You're actually, if you think about in your team, you might have people in your team like this. If you've got two people working with children and one of them thinks that the criminal justice system is failing children and it harms children and it's a waste of time and it re-traumatises them, and you have another colleague who thinks that justice will be done, trust in the police, trust in the court systems, you have two very, very different people there. And that's just based on their beliefs and their biases. So the way that they would work with those children and those families would be different. Even if they were doing the exact same job, just purely based on those two different beliefs, you would get two completely different services from those two people. And that's why this is so interesting. What beliefs were you brought up with that you later rejected, and why did you reject them? Now, that one is a pauser. If you want to pause this, pause it now. Those of you that didn't pause, or if you're just coming back to this now after you spent some time thinking about this yourself, what beliefs were you brought up with that you later rejected? This could be huge for some of you. This could be your religion. This could be beliefs about particular groups of people. This could be racism. This could be homophobia. This could be sexism. This could be that you were brought up to, you were brought up to believe that abortion was immoral. There are so many things that this could be. You get so many of your beliefs and values and your biases from your parents and carers and your support network as a child. And then lots of times people eventually reject them. You know, you reject them either in childhood, or you reject them later on. You reject them after education, or you reject them because of a life experience you have that proves to you or teaches you that that's not quite how things are. This one's an important one because you need to look at why you rejected them and then consider how that might have impacted your practice. And then also consider, what beliefs are you left with from childhood or from being brought up that you still have? And are they so deeply embedded that you don't challenge them? Or have you challenged some of them? That's such an interesting thing to think about. There's some really interesting ones here. I'm trying not to pick all of them. Write about a time when someone accused you of holding offensive or biased beliefs. Now that one's interesting because you might know what I mean by this, but there are so many beliefs that you might have that are technically not incorrect but may offend other people. And this is where it gets really muddy, our type of work. It gets complicated because you may well, not believe in an ideology that someone else believes in. And then they may be offended that you don't believe in that ideology, but you are still actually entitled not to believe in it. However, there are other biases or offensive views that you might hold that are actually a breach of somebody else's human rights. So if you were to hold oppressive or racist beliefs about groups of, South Asian children, then I feel like that's where the line is crossed at that point. Do you know what I mean? It's like you could hold some pretty strong views on, I'm trying to relate it to myself. So I hold really strong views on psychiatry and I'm anti-psychiatry. I believe in the trauma-informed, strength-based model of working with traumatised, depressed and abused humans. So I would not support those humans being told that they're mentally ill or that they have disorders. I would not support that. I would actively fight against that if I was working on that case, right? That could offend psychiatrists. That could offend the CPN that I was working with. That could even offend the family. So if the family believe their child is mentally ill and needs to be medicated or needs a treatment or ECT, and I'm the person saying, don't do that to them, I don't believe this is right, I believe that this is oppressive, that could be offensive. It is definitely biased because I have a bias there. I could definitely offend people. That could cause a complaint. So somebody could make a complaint that I was working on their case and that I disagreed that the child needed medication or had a personality disorder, and that they felt that I was not listening to them, or they felt that I didn't believe that their child was mentally ill, and that's because I don't. And so some of this stuff's really important to reflect on. We all hold views about things, and some of them will form quite a strong bias. They're not just casual, fleeting views that you have. They change the way you think. They change the way you respond to things. And that is important that we all recognise that that's what's happening, especially if it starts to impact work. And also, if you're listening to this, knowing full well that you do hold some pretty dodgy or harmful views about particular groups of people. So if you are, I often hear people saying things like, I don't hate gay people, I think they should just keep it to themselves, keep it private. That if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, I actually do think that, I do think there is an issue with that, then you do need to reflect on that, because that is a view that would harm somebody else's life. That would harm a child, it would harm a couple, or it would harm, people's rights to equality. Whereas there are other things that you could hold views on that don't harm other people, they just might come across as offensive. And this is where conversations get into free speech and freedom of ideas and stuff like that. This part of the book is really interesting. Let's have this is a good one. So another bias that people hold, a cognitive bias, is the just world belief. So one of these questions says, do you believe that people generally get what they deserve in life? How does this relate to your clients and their traumas? Now, this is a really interesting one. Do you believe that people generally get what they deserve in life? The research in psychology suggests that a large proportion of us as populations around the world do believe in justice. We believe that people get what they deserve and they deserve what they get. That good people will have good things happen to them. So good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. And if you are a bad person, you will get punished. And if you're a good person, you'll get rewarded by some sort of cosmic force. For some people, it's God. For some people, it's karma. For some people, it's auras. For some people, it's the zodiac. There's just so many hundreds of different beliefs. But actually, they all rest on this theory called belief in a just world. The fact that humans find a way of dealing with the world, coping with the world, by believing that there's a rhyme and reason to everything. You know, like when people say everything happens for a reason, does it? So are you one of those people? Are you the type of person that says everything happens for a reason? Or are you the type of person that says what goes around comes around? Or, you know, are you the type of person that says karma will get them in the end? Then if you recognise these sentiments, then you have high belief in a just world. Like, you believe that the world is just and things will go round and sort itself out. There are other people, however, that don't believe this. They believe the world is generally unfair, unjust, oppressive, that lots of things go wrong, there's lots of injustices in the world, that lots of the world doesn't actually make any sense. Now, those two sets of beliefs and anything in between, because people also, you can be anywhere really on that spectrum and you can move and shift throughout your life. How would that relate to your clients, like to the children and the families that you're working with, or the research that you're doing, or that report that you are writing? Think about it. If you hold these biases, either that you do live in a just and fair world or that you don't, how would that change the way you work? How would that change the way you write? How would that change the way you understand something? Maybe it's a referral, maybe it's a data set. How would it, because it would change it. You're not objective all the time. So that's such an interesting question. What else is on here? Let's have a look. They're so interesting. There's just so many of them. So many to choose from. This one's an interesting one. Okay. Who do you go to when you need to sense check your beliefs or your thoughts about an issue? So just think about that for a second. Who do you go to? You know, is it your partner? Is it your mate at work? Is it a close colleague? Is it your line manager? Is it your sister? Is it your dad? You know, who is it that you go and talk to? Is it a forum? Do you post things anonymously when you're trying to sense check yourself? You know, like loads of people do on like Yahoo Answers or on, like Reddit and stuff like that. Like, where are you going for your sense check? You know, if you thought, I'm not sure whether I'm in the wrong here. You know, like on Mumsnet has the "Am I being unreasonable?" posts. And that's sense checking. That's people being like, I don't know right now whether I am being unreasonable, whether this is my view or whether this is other people's views or not. I don't know. And you still have to do that at work. So who do you go to? And what do they say to you? Are they a good person to sense check with or not? Do they challenge you? Do they ask you some questions to find out why you think that about that particular issue? Or do they just nod and agree and sort of let you get on with it? Or do they tell you you're wrong all the time, like you're wrong every time? Who is it? And why do you trust them? What is it about them that means that you go to them to say, I've been thinking about this and I don't know if I'm right or not, and I just need someone to talk to about it. And if you don't have someone like that, how are you coping? How are you checking yourself? How are you getting other people's perspectives? And how could you do that if you're listening to this thinking, I don't really have a person that I go to. What am I going to do? Who could you go to? What could you do about that after this podcast? Okay, this is a really controversial one. This is really interesting. I've just found another one as I was flicking through. How do your political beliefs change the way you work? That one's fun. See, this one's interesting because I don't think we talk enough about this, but it's one of those things that you're not supposed to talk about in British culture. It's like, don't talk about money, don't talk about politics, don't talk about religion. Those are the things you are not supposed to talk about. The problem is, we'd probably be so further on as a society if we talked about those three things a lot more. So, political belief, or you could also call it political ideology, if you subscribe to a political ideology, it would change the way you worked, because you would see social issues in different ways. You would see the cause of them as different. The solution to them would be different. You might even see groups of people differently depending on your political ideology. You might believe you might believe in capitalism, and therefore your views on things like oppression, work, labour, things like that would be completely different. You might identify yourself as like a socialist, and therefore your views on how the world and communities and people should work together, or the way resources should be shared and things like that, would be completely different. And you can't really get away from the fact that that would potentially change the way that you worked, because it also changes the way that you think. You're thinking in a particular way because you subscribe to an ideology. You can't get away from that at work. So that would be an interesting one for you to think about. How do you think your own political beliefs change the way you work? Do you think? Have you ever considered that before? Do you think it makes you better at your job? Or do you think there are certain things, like for example, does it make you more frustrated at work? Does your political belief make you more frustrated at work? Or are there issues that you think come from your political beliefs that then make you more stressed out at work, or make you calmer at work, or make you feel like you're making a difference? Like, how are your political beliefs aligning with your work? Do you feel like they do, or do you sometimes feel like they don't? Stuff like this is so cool to think about. And also, critical reflection, absolutely vital. You need to keep yourself fresh, and you need to challenge yourself as much as possible. So having these like difficult conversations, or even just difficult thoughts, are well worth doing. They're well worth the mental energy, I believe, anyway. Let's find maybe one more. This is a good one. How has this line of work changed your beliefs about the world? See, because most of what I've been talking about so far is how your beliefs about the world change the way you work. But what about the way you work changing your beliefs about the world? And for a lot of us, that has already happened. You know, you might be a lot more safety conscious around your own children. You might spot things in the street that other people don't spot. You might be suspicious where other people are not. You might recognise in yourself that you always think the worst of people, that they're all sex offenders, they're all going to abuse kids, they're all a danger. And so these conversations are really important. How has your line of work changed the way that you see the world? Has it made you calmer? Has it made you more fearful of the world? Do you think it's made you a better person or not? Do you think it harms you? Do you think it's changed the way you raise your kids? Do you think it has changed your friendships? So for me, if I was to reflect on it for me, oh my gosh, this line of work has just changed my entire life. And you can't pretend that I don't think any of us could pretend that it hadn't. There's so many ways it's changed, but one of them, I don't want to get into I would just be here all day if I talked about this. One of them for sure has definitely been the company I keep. Because, and I didn't do this deliberately, although I do it now, it made me struggle to keep some of my friendships, because they were people that I really did love, and I loved spending time with them, and I'd maybe known them a long time. But then I felt like they just held views that were just completely counter to what I was doing. Maybe it was friends that made rape jokes, or friends that said, they just believe that people make up being sexually abused for compensation or anything. Let's just say that, for example. It's how do you stay friends with them at that point? Especially if they're rigid in their thinking. What happens to that friendship after that? And then I guess what happened was you then meet more and more people that are aligned with your thinking through work, through research, through your social groups, or you just notice them. So you might make some new friends somewhere socially, and you very quickly think, they're on my wavelength. They get this. And then you start to feel more close to those people because you at least you don't have to explain to them why children don't make up being raped, stuff like that, like the small mercies. And I don't know, that's been quite big for me. It does mean that now, much later on, so I'm 30 next year, and I've been through this whole sort of growth process. It does mean that now I am definitely surrounded by people on my wavelength. Not so much an echo chamber, because people are very different. My friends are all very diverse, very different people, to the point where I could probably think of people that just wouldn't get on with each other, but I get on with them both. They're such different and diverse people, but I know that they get it. They're on my wavelength. They agree with me on fundamental issues around human rights and around feminism for me, and women's rights and children's rights and issues in the world. And so you have that almost like this foundation that's been laid in your friendship. Now, if I was never in this line of work, these things would not be an issue in my friendship at all, because it just wouldn't occur to you that they would be an issue, would they? You'd be more concerned about, are they nice? Do they like coming out for a drink every now and then? Are they a bit of a dick? Those are the things you'd be thinking, can you still remain friends with this person? Are they funny? Are they, are they a good listener? All that basic stuff. But I think this line of work does change who you end up knocking around with and the company you keep. And, is that healthy? I don't know. So yeah, how has this line of work changed your beliefs? It's definitely changed my beliefs around, I think, 1,000 things. And that's education. The more educated you get on a particular subject, the more informed you are, the more you see the world through a different lens, things change at that point. Your beliefs change. And then the way you act changes, the way you think changes, the way you would respond to a situation changes. And that's why this type of reflection is so important. In terms of our work in child sexual abuse, we have to learn to reflect much more and much more effectively. We have to really dig into some of the beliefs that we're holding or supporting or rejecting for us to move forward as practitioners, researchers and other professionals. You have to know yourself to be able to do a good job here. And so I would encourage you to go on that journey and find those things out about yourself. Where is your line drawn on particular issues? What do you believe about things? What do you not believe about things? What beliefs and values and biases do you have? What have you rejected as you've grown? What has changed over time? What changed it? Was it work? Was it your family? Was it your partner? Was it your kids? Was it your friends? What went on? How did that belief change? So this was just a podcast to really look at that and get us to really think about it. I would encourage you to use this podcast and then write. Get something out of your system. Go and write in a reflective diary. Go and think about what I've just said. Jot down your own ideas. If you've got the reflective journal, you could just use that. If not, lots of questions that I've addressed in this podcast, you could just pause this podcast, go through it again, and pause it at the bits that you want to do an exercise on and you want to write about for a little bit. But other than that, you are always welcome to contact me. Thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you on another podcast.